Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes. In the hushed atmosphere of the federal courtroom, the testimony in Sean Diddy Combs' trial, as covered by Inner City Press, took a dramatic turn when Dawn Richard, formerly of Danity Kane, stepped forward. The room brimmed with anticipation as she began to speak. Far from just another high-profile witness, Richard carried the weight of painful memories. Her testimony painted a vivid picture of a disturbing incident involving a skillet, eggs, and a terrified Cassie Ventura curled up defensively. By the time she finished, Diddy's polished public persona had cracked. Observers noted him huddling with his legal team, murmuring anxiously, his composure fraying. This trial is more than a legal proceeding, it's a seismic moment of reckoning. The opening week alone unleashed a torrent of raw emotions, long-buried pain, and shocking disclosures, from audio evidence to wrenching accounts by former associates. We're unpacking the unraveling of Diddy's empire and whether it can weather this storm. When Dawn Richard entered the courtroom, the energy shifted palpably. No cameras clicked, but every gaze, jurors, lawyers, and even Diddy himself fixed on her. Known to the world as a standout from Making the Band and a former Danity Kane member, here she was simply a witness, her words poised to ignite the proceedings. Her demeanor was steady, yet burdened. After a prolonged pause, she responded to the first question, and her story poured forth like a dam breaking. She recounted a harrowing episode from 2009 at Diddy's Los Angeles mansion. According to Richard, Diddy stormed downstairs in a rage, hunting for his phone. Cassie Ventura was nearby. Rather than asking, he barked demands, and when she didn't respond quickly enough, he allegedly threw a skillet of eggs at her. The courtroom gallery gasped. Richard described Cassie shielding her face as Diddy shouted, her body curling into a fetal position on the floor. This was only the beginning of her account. Dawn Richard's testimony in Sean Diddy Combs' federal trial, as reported by Inner City Press, continued with a harrowing escalation. She described how Diddy, in a rage, allegedly tried to kick Cassie Ventura before seizing her by the neck and dragging her up the stairs of his Los Angeles mansion. Moments later, the sound of shattering glass pierced the air. It wasn't just noise, Richard testified. It was terror. You could feel it radiating through the house. This wasn't hearsay or conjecture. Richard was an eyewitness, delivering her account under oath. Her words provided the trial's most vivid and unsettling depiction yet, a first-hand glimpse into the private actions of a music mogul whose public life exuded glamour and success. What shocked those in the courtroom even more than the skillet incident was the pattern Richard revealed. This wasn't an isolated explosion of anger, she claimed, but a glimpse into a broader culture, a hidden system of control and fear beneath the glitz of red carpets and chart-topping hits. According to Richard, Diddy meticulously dictated every aspect of the lives of the women around him, especially Cassie. She needed his approval for everything, Richard alleged, where she could sit, what she could say in interviews, what clothes she wore, even what she ate during grueling studio sessions. This control, Richard said, went beyond micromanagement. It was psychological manipulation. She recounted Diddy holding meetings in his underwear, belittling women in front of entire teams, and enforcing exhausting group rehearsals that stretched for hours with minimal food or breaks. Cassie, Richard testified, bore the worst of it. She was allegedly barred from leaving rooms without Diddy's permission and faced repercussions for defying him. Punishments like being excluded from appearances, having performances canceled, or being ignored for days as she awaited his call. Among the most disturbing details was Richard's account of Diddy isolating Cassie, discouraging her from contacting family or friends, and confiscating her phone under the guise of security. If Cassie voiced frustration, Richard claimed, Diddy would dismiss her with, "You don't realize how lucky you are." As Richard spoke, courtroom observers noted Diddy's demeanor shifting. Initially calm, he soon crossed his arms, then leaned in to whisper urgently with his attorneys. A source inside the courtroom reported that his lawyers handed him a pen and paper and he scribbled something, shaking his head. The aura of control he once projected seemed to crumble in real time. Richard's testimony, already explosive, was only the beginning of the storm unfolding in the trial. The prosecution in Sean Diddy Combs' federal trial, as reported by Inner City Press, stunned the courtroom with an unexpected piece of evidence: an audio recording. It wasn't a phone call or a voicemail, but a raw capture of Cassie Ventura in a moment of desperation, allegedly confronting one of Diddy's close associates who had secretly filmed her during one of the notorious freak-offs. As the recording played, the courtroom fell into a heavy silence. Cassie's voice crackled through the speakers, charged with raw emotion, frantic, angry, and pleading. Her breathless panic was unmistakable as she demanded, "Delete it! I swear to God, if you don't, I'll—" The audio cut off abruptly, but the weight of her words lingered, carrying a mix of threat and palpable fear. Legal analysts noted the recording's dual nature. It could paint Cassie as erratic or unstable, potentially undermining her credibility. Yet, it also laid bare the profound psychological toll of years of alleged humiliation, capturing a woman pushed to the edge, not out of vengeance, but in a fight for self-preservation. The defense team scrambled to object, arguing the audio lacked context, but the judge permitted it to remain in evidence. As it played, attention shifted between the speakers and Diddy himself. Eyewitnesses described him as visibly shaken. His jaw tightened, lips pressed thin, and at one point he turned away, a hand shielding his forehead. Some observed he seemed like a man confronted by a truth he thought would never surface in court. This wasn't just another revelation, it was a raw glimpse into the emotional devastation Cassie endured. The audio conveyed a story no document or image could match, resonating with the jury and visibly unsettling Diddy. It amplified the impact of Dawn Richards' testimony, adding a visceral layer to the unfolding narrative of control and its consequences. The power of Dawn Richards' testimony in Sean Diddy Combs' federal trial, as reported by Inner City Press, lay not only in her presence but in the palpable fear she brought to life in the courtroom. Returning to the now infamous skillet incident, she clarified that it was no impulsive outburst. Staring directly at the jury, she described it as part of a deliberate pattern of intimidation. "Diddy didn't just snap," she said. "He calculated his reactions. You could tell he'd done this before." Richard recounted the tense atmosphere in the house that morning in 2009. Cassie appeared anxious while Diddy stormed around, agitated over a missing phone. When he suspected Cassie had moved it, his demeanor shifted darkly. "He screamed her name so loudly the house seemed to shake," Richard recalled. Cassie hurried downstairs, still in pajamas, only to face immediate accusations of theft. Without pause, Diddy allegedly hurled a cast-iron skillet, still warm, heavy with food, directly at her. The courtroom fell silent as Richard paused, her gaze dropping to the floor, her composure masking a simmering emotion. She described Cassie collapsing, arms raised to protect her head, as Diddy loomed over her, shouting. Richard admitted she took a step forward but froze, paralyzed by fear. "He turned and looked at me," she said. "His eyes weren't angry. They were empty, like I didn't exist." Then, she testified, he dragged Cassie upstairs, and soon after, the sound of breaking glass echoed through the house. When a prosecutor asked why she didn't intervene, Richard's response landed heavily. "If I had, I genuinely believe I wouldn't be here today." As Richard stepped down, the prosecution's narrative had solidified. Diddy was not merely controlling but allegedly violent, emotionally manipulative, and adept at psychological warfare. The defense, however, was ready to counter. The next day, they launched a fierce cross-examination of Cassie Ventura, aiming to dismantle her credibility. They zeroed in on her mental health history, spotlighting her struggles with PTSD, rehab stints, and therapy sessions, suggesting these pointed to instability rather than trauma. Cassie remained unshaken. "Yes, I went to therapy," she said firmly, "because I needed to heal from him." The defense then raised a prior rape allegation Cassie had made against someone else, which never led to charges, implying a pattern of false claims. Cassie stood her ground. It wasn't false. It was ignored. Next, the defense presented a barrage of text messages, some affectionate, others raw or explicit, cherry-picking lines to portray Cassie as clingy or obsessive. They quoted her writing, "I'll do anything you want, just don't leave me," and pressed her to explain. "It means I was brainwashed," Cassie replied without hesitation. "That's what abuse looks like." The courtroom was riveted. Even the stenographer reportedly paused briefly. The defense pushed further, citing a FaceTime call Cassie allegedly took from her now-husband while in bed with Diddy, arguing it showed she had choices. Looking the defense attorney in the eye, Cassie responded, "I didn't have choices. I had obligations. I was owned." Observers noted Diddy's reaction during this exchange. His shoulders tensed, jaw clenched, whispering urgently to his legal team as if grappling to reclaim a narrative slipping from his grasp. Then came another bombshell, a recording, not from the witness stand, but from a voicemail allegedly obtained from a former Diddy employee who worked security at his parties. The audio captured Cassie's voice, frantic and tearful, pleading with one of Diddy's associates. "Delete that video or I swear to God I'll end you." The courtroom leaned in, gripped by the raw emotion. Cassie was sobbing, hyperventilating, her voice breaking, at times barely coherent, revealing not just a threat but the depth of her distress. The audio revealed not just Cassie Ventura's desperation but a deeper truth about her alleged entrapment in Sean Diddy Combs' world, as detailed by inner-city press. The recording captured her pleading to delete a video, allegedly showing her in a freak-off with Diddy and a male escort, which the prosecution claimed was used as blackmail, not only against Cassie but other women in Diddy's circle. These tapes, prosecutors argued, were his leverage, tools to maintain control. Cassie, they said, discovered the video's existence after leaving Diddy, and her frantic reaction reflected a woman fighting to erase evidence that had humiliated and confined her for years. The defense objected, calling it out of context, but the judge upheld its admission. When the recording ended, Cassie remained composed despite the defense's attempts to paint her as volatile. "I was desperate," she said calmly. "If that footage went public, it wouldn't just ruin my life, it would destroy everything I fought to rebuild." A juror was seen wiping their eyes and the courtroom's atmosphere shifted. Diddy's face paled, his foot tapped restlessly beneath the table. He leaned toward his lawyer, muttering for minutes, then removed his glasses, shielding his eyes with his hand. His carefully curated empire, built on control, was visibly unraveling. The trial's first week revealed a stark contrast between Diddy's public image, mogul, philanthropist, music icon, and the man witnesses described behind closed doors. The courtroom became a stage where his facade began to crack. Testimonies didn't just recount isolated acts of anger or abuse, they exposed a calculated system of emotional domination. Affection was weaponized, loyalty coerced rather than earned. A former assistant testifying under the alias Monica described the oppressive environment of working for Diddy. She spoke of bizarre rules like avoiding eye contact unless addressed and being told to deceive Cassie about Diddy's whereabouts. Monica recalled overhearing Diddy instruct a staff member to clean the girl up after a party, referring to a visibly intoxicated woman allegedly unconscious in a hotel suite. She also described a moment when Cassie confronted Diddy in front of staff about being coerced into another freak-off. Diddy reportedly laughed and said, "You belong to me." The room froze as Cassie walked away, tears streaming down her face. These accounts wove a chilling narrative of coercion masked as charisma. Outside the courtroom, media outlets began revisiting Diddy's old interviews, clips where he laughed about wild parties or his bad boy for life persona. Through the trial's lens, these once lighthearted comments now felt like veiled confessions. Legal experts noted that the defense's claim of Cassie's consensual participation weakened with each witness. The pattern, controlling texts, manipulated relationships, cycles of rage followed by extravagant apologies, suggested emotional captivity, not mutual affection. Prosecutors argued the true horror lay not in overt violence, but in its normalization. Cassie didn't stay because she wanted to, they said. She stayed because she had forgotten how to leave. The jury in Sean Diddy Combs' federal trial, as covered by inner-city press, watched a psychological drama unfold, with each testimony peeling back layers of a carefully crafted image. Diddy, who once strode into court with confidence, now sat subdued, his larger-than-life persona fading under the weight of accusations. As the trial's second week approached, attention turned to Aubrey O'Day, the outspoken former Danity Kane singer known for her past criticisms of Diddy. Her testimony, delivered under oath, promised to be seismic, and it delivered. Taking the stand with visible emotion, Aubrey recounted her time on making the band, describing it as less a talent show and more a grueling boot camp. Diddy, she alleged, ruled with an iron fist, berating contestants, humiliating them publicly, and threatening to cut them for the smallest missteps. It wasn't about creating stars, she said. It was about breaking spirits. But it was the off-camera incidents that left the courtroom reeling. Aubrey claimed Diddy closely monitored his female artists, particularly Cassie Ventura. She described walking into a soundproof studio where Diddy was screaming at Cassie, accusing her of being boring and ruining his vibe. In a rage, he allegedly hurled a laptop against the wall, shattering it inches from Cassie's head. Aubrey further alleged that the freak-offs referenced in earlier testimonies weren't exclusive to Cassie. She claimed assistants, stylists, and even background dancers were invited to private gatherings where boundaries blurred and consent was often presumed rather than given. The most jarring moment came when Aubrey recounted a Miami party where Diddy allegedly urged male executives to sample the menu. When pressed by prosecutors, she clarified with a pause, he meant the women. Asked if Diddy used drugs around these women, Aubrey nodded. Ecstasy, MDMA, cocaine. It was like candy, she said. Turning to the jury, she added, people ask why Cassie didn't leave. When someone controls your music, your money, your body, your future, it's not a relationship. It's a prison. Diddy reportedly covered his face with both hands during this testimony, his body language crumpling inward as if each word struck a blow. Reporters noted he seemed like a man confronting revelations he'd long hoped would stay buried. By the end of the first week, the prosecution had achieved the unthinkable, transforming one of music's most untouchable figures into a vulnerable defendant. The evidence wasn't just factual, it was emotional, psychological, and cumulative. Legal analysts emphasized that the case had shifted from a single act of abuse to a broader pattern of control, a culture Diddy allegedly created where women were not partners but pawns in a system he orchestrated. Multiple former employees, now whistleblowers, confirmed the existence of tapes of sexual encounters, with some testifying that Diddy called them his insurance, a chilling term echoed repeatedly in court. Diddy's defense team pivoted frantically, calling character witnesses and playing old interviews where Cassie spoke positively of Diddy, arguing she stayed for the lavish lifestyle. But prosecutors countered with texts from Cassie that revealed fear, guilt, and obligation, not enjoyment. She wasn't reveling in luxury, she was trapped, unable to let go. The jury didn't just listen, they observed Diddy shrinking in his seat, watched witness after witness describe a man consumed by power. The week's final moment was staggering. The prosecution presented a list of over 60 pending lawsuits against Diddy, with women alleging everything from sexual misconduct to trafficking to psychological abuse. One accuser was just 9 years old at the time of the alleged incident. The courtroom fell silent. As the judge called a recess for the weekend, Diddy rose slowly, eyes down, avoiding cameras as he was led away. Week 1 had ended, and for the first time in decades, Diddy wasn't scripting the narrative. He was ensnared in it.